Hello everybody, welcome to the next lesson on extract from the Prelude. Today is going to be slightly shorter tasks, nothing too onerous. The first thing all you need to do is to look at this knowledge recall from stuff from yesterday and just fill it in please. So which of the poets in the collection were Romantic poets? How did Wordsworth feel about the French Revolution? What was Wordsworth's childhood like? And extract from the Prelude is part of an epic poem. What does that mean? Okay, please could you pause the video and just have a go answering those questions. Thank you. Okay, so here are the answers for you to check through. So the other poets in the collection that we've studied who are Romantic poets are Shelley and Blake, the poets for Ozymandias and London. Wordsworth initially supported he supported the French Revolution, but then he changed his mind when he saw how brutal and violent it all was. And I think that tells us a little bit about Wordsworth, the man himself, being quite sensitive, a bit of a pacifist. And we read yesterday that Shelley had a bit of a problem with that and was quite cross about it. What was Wordsworth's childhood like? Well, he had a very difficult childhood. He didn't have good relationships with his parents or his grandparents. His parents died when he was very young and he lived with his grandparents. Again, he didn't get on with them. And so he spent most of his time outdoors. He lived in the Lake District and he spent a lot of time exploring nature. And the Prelude is part of an epic poem. What does that mean? So this poem, it's long enough anyway, but an epic poem is a long narrative poem, a long story poem. And this poem is also autobiographical. So it's written about a memory from when he was younger, and we're going to look at that today. So today, all we're going to do is we're going to understand the plot, the narrative of the poem, The Prelude. Even though it's part of an epic poem, the bit that we're going to see is its own story in its own right. So it is a full story, a bit like you telling me about a memory from when you were younger. This is exactly what the Prelude is. It's just a memory that's had a massive impact on Wordsworth, and so he formed a poem about it. It formed part of his autobiographical poem. So this is the big idea for the poem The Prelude. For each of the poems we give you, we like to talk you through a big idea that you can copy down and then use in your introductions and certainly your conclusions for the when you're answering the questions. So please could you copy this down? I'll just talk you through it. It says, Wordsworth's autobiographical poem is part of an epic poem and explores the power of nature, and can be considered as an allegory for self-discovery and growing up. So it's about two bits of the exam really. It's about the power of nature, much like Storm on the Island, and can also be considered an allegory. An allegory, it says down here, is a story or poem or a picture that can be interpreted to reveal a hidden meaning, typically a moral or political one. So this poem has got a hidden meaning, much like Storm on the Island has got an extended metaphor to suggest to talk about the storm as the troubles in Northern Ireland. This poem has got a hidden meaning about self-discovery and growing up, okay, because this memory that he's going to tell us about has had a significant impact on him. So we'll talk more about that in tomorrow's lesson, but please can you just pause the video and make sure you copy that down. Thank you. A bit more copying, I'm afraid. These are some of the words in the poem that you might not have heard of before, or might not have heard of in the context that they're written in the poem. So these are the words I've picked out that you might not understand. Everything else is pretty common language because, like we read yesterday, Wordsworth was very keen on making his poetry accessible to everybody, and it should sound like the way he would have spoken at the time. Okay, so just pause the video and copy down those bits of vocabulary, please. Okay, so we're going to read the extract from the Prelude, and just to tell you a little bit about what happens in the poem. The extract describes how Wordsworth went out one day, stole a boat on a lake at night, and he was alone, and he was young as well. This memory is when he was a child, and a mountain peak loomed over him, and its presence had a great effect on him for days afterwards, and he was really troubled by the experience. Okay, so I'll talk you through exactly what happens as we go through the lesson. It's just a brief summary for you. So for those of you who haven't been to the Lake District or seen Lake District on the TV, these are a couple of images. The Lake District is a very wild and natural place. It's a beautiful place. If you've not been there when you're older, I suggest you go. And there are lots of different lakes and mountains, and it's quite remote. So although you'll see lots of tourists there now, when certainly when Wordsworth was writing this poetry, there wouldn't have been the footfall that there is today. There wouldn't have been as many people, given that travel was a difficult thing to do. So when we say this is remote, this really was a remote place for William Wordsworth to walk around on his own as a young boy. So he did, and he wandered around this as a young boy. But we're used to seeing pictures like this of the Lake District from above, so sort of aerial shots, so we can look down at the lake, and we don't really get an understanding of the scale of the hills and the mountains around it. So this picture here is a bit grainy, I'm afraid. But these trees, you can imagine how tall the trees are. These all look like pine wood trees, and this is a still lake, and then we get a sight of a little bit of the mountain going up. And so imagine being a little boy going to visit. I know certainly when I visited the Lake District, I felt quite insignificant, stood against the shoreline, and just feeling the size of the place and the power of nature, really, the magnitude, the size of nature, and how sort of insignificant is a quite sad word to use, but how insignificant we are, really, as in how small we are. And it really is a settler when you go and have a look and see that. So it's a beautiful place. There's some beautiful images of it, and that's the kind of place I want you to imagine as I'm talking you through what happens in the poem. So this is the poem. It's quite long. It's all in. Let me have a look in your anthology. Actually, I can't remember exactly how it's presented. Yes, it's all in one stanza in your anthology. When you come into school next week, if you haven't got your anthology now, we'll make sure that you've got a copy to take home with you, if not your own copy. We've been raiding the classrooms trying to find them all, and so you'll be able to transfer some of these notes onto the books throughout the summer. But yes, it's one long stanza. It's not colour coded in your anthology. I've colour coded it because I feel that there's three main parts to this story. And I think any memory you have when you're retelling a memory from when you were young will have different sections in it. And the sections that I've highlighted here are three very different feelings, really, that young Wordsworth has about this memory that happens. And in this memory, he basically steals a boat. To steal is quite a strong word. He takes a boat from the side of the shore in one of the places that would have been like this, and it's by a willow tree, and he rows out on the shore. He rows out onto the lake, and it's in the evening. Oops, wrong way. And it's in the evening, and he rows out, and he thinks it's just amazing. It's the most beautiful thing ever, and he's having a wonderful time. And then all of a sudden, well, I'll let you see. I'll read it to you, and then I'll go through it in a bit more detail. So, one summer evening, led by her. In this case, her is nature personified. Okay, one summer evening, led by her, I found a little boat tied to a willow tree within a rocky cove, its usual home. Straight I unloosed her chain, and stepping in, pushed from the shore. It was an act of stealth and troubled pleasure, Nor without the voice of mountain echoes did my boat move on, leaving behind her still on either side small circles glittering idly in the moon, until they melted all into one track of sparkling light. But now, like one who rows proud of his skill to reach a chosen point with an unswerving line, I fixed my view upon the summit of a craggy ridge, the horizon's utmost boundary. Far above was nothing but the stars and the grey sky. She was an elf in pinnace. Lustily I dipped my oars into the silent lake, and I rose upon the stroke. My boat went heaving through the water like a swan, when from behind the craggy steep, till then the horizon's bound, a huge peak, black and huge, as if with voluntary power or instinct, upreared its head. I struck and struck again, and growing still in stature, the grim shape towered up between me and the stars, and still, for so it seemed, with purpose of its own and measured motion, like a living thing, strode after me. With trembling oars I turned, and through the silent water stole my way back to the covert of the willow tree. There in her mooring place I left my bark, and through the meadows homeward went in grave and serious mood. But after I had seen that spectacle for many days, my brain worked with a dim and undetermined sense of unknown modes of being. Over my thoughts there hung a darkness, call it solitude or blank desertion. No familiar shape remained, no pleasant images of trees or sea or sky, no colours of green fields, but huge and mighty forms that do not live like living men, move slowly through the mind by day, and were a trouble to my dreams. Okay, so you may not, I should have a full stop at the end of the poem, sorry. You may not have understood what the hell was going on yet in that poem, but you will in a second. Brace yourselves, you're about to see why I am an English teacher and not an art teacher. So really sorry, I apologise profusely for what you're about to see, but I really should have got my 7-year-old to do this for me, but here we go. I've tried to draw what is happening in the poem, and I'll talk you through exactly what is happening. Yep, there we go. So, at the beginning of the poem, we have Wordsworth as a little boy, and it says, one summer evening, so it's evening time and it's summer, led by her is nature personified. I found a little boat tied to a willow tree. This is my version of a willow tree. There was a little boat tied to it within a rocky cove, its usual home. So this boat is usually tied to this willow tree. I unloosed her chain and, stepping in, pushed from the shore. So he basically unties the boat from the willow tree and pushes from the shore in this boat. It's like a little rowing boat. Okay, and he goes off, and he's quite happy about that. There's not too many feelings there, but I get the feeling that it's quite calm because it's a summer evening, and he's just decided he's just going to go off onto this boat. Anyway, so it was an act of stealth, he says. It was an act of stealth, so it's a bit secret. So he knows he shouldn't have been doing it. And trouble pleasure. You know when you shouldn't be doing something, but it's really lovely and you just really want to do it. So he does it anyway. He goes out on this boat. Nor without the voice of mountain echoes did my boat move on, leaving behind her still on either side small circles glittering idly in the moon. So the moon is out, and as the boat goes out, she leaves beside her, the boat that is, left beside her, because the boat is personified as female, little small circles glittering in the moon. You know when water, if you've ever seen water at night and you imagine dipping an oar into the water, it would leave little circles and they'd be shimmering in the moonlight. So it's a real special image of, kind of sounds quite magical, until they melted into one track. So this is my one track. So there's my tree. The tree's going further away. He is rowing so he can still see the tree, and is rowing quite well, and it's just one track on the water behind him. You know, like if you go swimming and there's a preview to the other images. You know, when you go swimming and you're just the only person in the pool, and you've got, well, if ever you've had that opportunity, and then the water just glides beautifully behind you. That's what it's like. and it's sparkling light. So the light, the moon shimmering on the water. You can imagine it looks really beautiful. But now, like one who rose proud of his skill to reach a chosen point with an unswerving line, I fix my view upon the summit of a craggy ridge. So he looks at the top. The summit is the top of a craggy ridge, which is like a little mountain, a little hill there. And he decides he's fixed it, and he's, you know what, I'm going to go for it. And he really goes with an unswerving line, with a straight line. He is rowing out into the middle of the lake. The horizon's utmost boundary, far above, was nothing but stars and the grey sky. Now he's talking about the boat again, because the boat's still personified. She was an elfin pinnace. So the boat is described, the pinnace is the small boat, she was described as elfin, which is like fairy-like, imp-like. There's something cheeky about that word as well, something about being a little bit mischievous and fairy-like. So there's something magical about this night. The stars are out, the moon's out, everything's glittering and special. Lustily, so with real enthusiasm, not the other sort of lustily, I dipped my oars into the silent lake, and I rose upon the straight. My boat went heaving through the water like a swan. So everything in this image sounds really idyllic. He's completely alone, but everything's really special and magical as he rows out towards the middle of the lake, with his eyes fixed on the top of this ridge. The stars are out and everything's glittering. Okay, but this is where we have a change of feeling. So I want you to imagine he's gone even further now. So he's gone further. This is the bit he was looking at before. His view was here, but he's gone a bit further, and oh my goodness, what on earth is that he can see behind this? He didn't see that before, but now he's gone backwards. He can see this. So from behind the craggy steep till then the horizon's bound. A huge, I've lost my cursor, there it is, a huge peak, black and huge, as if with power instinct upreared its head. So from behind this ridge, because he's gone backwards, this huge peak, a huge mountain, much bigger than the previous one, rears its head, and he describes it as if it's like a monster. It's like so big, it's personified, but in a monstrous way. It upreared its head, so it sounds like it's about to attack. I struck and struck again, so I'm growing still in stature. The grim shape towered up between me and the stars. So now the stars, I haven't drawn any stars. The stars are up here, and this is towering above him, and it's imposing, and it's big, it's massive. For so it seemed, with purpose of its own and measured motion, like a living thing, strode after me. So he feels like it's coming after him. He feels like this mountain is coming to attack him. With trembling oars. So now we've gone from him being really steady and calm and feeling really proud of himself as he was rowing before. He has trembling oars, so he's scared. I turn. So this is my boat turning around. So he'll be turning around now. So he's now going to be looking that way, the other way, so away from this big scary mountain. With trembling oars, I turned, and through the silent water stole my way back to the covert of the willow tree, back to the shelter of this willow tree. So now he's turning his boat round, coming all the way back as quickly as he can, back to the willow tree. And there in her mooring place I left my bark. So he leaves the boat there, and through the meadows homeward went in a grave and serious mood. So back through the meadows he goes home in a very serious, grave means like a very serious and scared mood. Okay, so this is he's away from the lake now, and he's away from, sorry, I just looked at my own picture and made me laugh. He's away from the lake now, and he's away from that. He's gone back through. And he says, but after I'd seen that spectacle, after he'd seen this at night, for many days, my brain worked with a dim and undetermined sense of unknown modes of being. So after that, his brain just couldn't get it out of his head, and he was imagining like monsters and things he'd never seen before. Over my thoughts there hung a darkness. There was something really dark about his thoughts now. Call it solitude or blank desertion. Solitude is about being lonely. He's feeling insignificant, a bit like I was saying about how you feel when you stand in imposing nature. No familiar shapes remained, no pleasant images of trees or sea, of sea or sky, no colours of green fields, but huge and mighty forms that do not live like living men. So he can't, when he goes to his imagination now, his imagination is not filled with the beauty of nature, but how sort of scary nature can be, and how scary, how he feels like it was intimidating him. And they move slowly through my mind by day and were a trouble to my dreams. He can't stop dreaming about it. It's something's changed in him. So on one level, the level that I want you to understand in today's lesson, sailed a boat, was quite happy about himself. He's really enjoying it. It's a very magical evening. He's really enjoying the magic of everything. Then, uh-oh, look what I've seen. That's not right. That's really scary. That's scarier than I thought it could possibly be. Oh my God, I'm so alone. Oh my goodness. I'm going to turn around. I'm going to row back as quickly as I can. Everything's changed about the way I think about nature. I can't stop thinking about it. I feel like monsters are coming to get me. I keep dreaming about it. This has really changed the way I see the world. Okay? So you can see how this could also be seen as a bit of a metaphor for growing up, and how once you see different things differently, you change as you grow up, like you have been doing, like you have. But this is a memory of a young Wordsworth, very young, younger than you are. I hope that helps to sort of summarise the story, even though my drawing's absolutely atrocious. So what I would like you to do today is do something similar to what I've done, but add to it. So you're going to draw the sections of the poem. You can do that in, you could probably do that in 3 pictures, but 4 if you want to do the same as I've done. The poem actually breaks down into 3 main sections there. You can see it on the PowerPoint, but the big bit here I put into 2 just because I wanted to explain how he took the boat. But you could do 3 pictures minimum. Look, I can't draw, so I don't want any of you moaning about having to draw. You can do stickmen like I did, it's fine. Or you can even print my wonderful pictures out if you wanted to. So draw your pictures, and then what I would like you to do is label from those sections, those 3 sections that I've put next to the pictures, those sections. From those sections, I'd like you to label a quotation that best sums up what's happening in the picture. So you're going to choose one line from each one. Which line out of here you think best sums up this picture, for example. And then you're going to choose a quotation that shows how the boy feels, how Wordsworth feels in this section of the poem. See if you can find anything that might suggest how he's feeling. So say, for example, if I was doing that, I might choose a description of the place because it shows that he sees it as magical, and so that's how he feels. Or I might show the way he's rowing because he's excited and enjoying being there. For this one, I might show how he describes the mountain as being scary, or how he's trembling. Okay. And then also, I would like you to label it with your own adjectives to describe the boy's feelings. So not just a quotation. You could put, for example, at this point he's feeling quite calm, or he's feeling excited, or he's feeling scared, or he's feeling anxious. Think of your own adjectives to describe the 3 main sections of the poem. Okay. And tomorrow's lesson obviously will delve deeper into the language analysis, but for now it's just understanding the plot of what happens in Wordsworth's little memory of when he took a boat from the side of the lake, and the effect that it had seeing the power of nature. Okay, thank you very much.